This is an open discussion, really, so you can ask any question about in the crowdfunding region you like, basically.
Yeah, hi, Harry McRandall again. Just hearing what Andrew was saying, and also looking around the room and seeing that there are some early stage entrepreneurs. It doesn't sound like there's a lot of hope in Jersey for that type of institution and development, because we seem to be a little bit further down the line. I mean, what hope do we have apart from the Innovation Fund, which seems to be a vehicle that sort of takes its time to do things as well, from what I given to understand. So I'm sure some of the entrepreneurs in here would be interested to hear what your views are in terms of really speeding the financial backing up.
Thanks, Harry. It's a very valid point, and it's one that I've raised myself. What we would suggest and have suggested is that, like the UK, you should have an Enterprise Investment Scheme Award. You should have that act in Jersey. There are many entrepreneurs in this island who will happily back small businesses that they think have a fighting chance of being successful if they could get a tax break on that investment. That's missing in this island, and I don't know why the government hasn't changed or amended that law. It definitely needs to be brought in. That's the only way I could really see it happening. But I would also suggest, don't be deterred from going onto a UK website and applying for finance, because there are Channel Islands people who are investing in those websites. They technically probably shouldn't, but they are. And you never know, you might be funded by local people.
Yeah, I would just add, I think it goes a little bit back to what I was mentioning about the need for a debate around crowdfunding and initiatives, and crowdfunding really was historically a large section of its business was for startups. If there could be something in Jersey to do the same, then we should talk about it openly and discuss the pros and cons. And I think tax breaks like they have in the UK, again, it's a proven track record to incentivise people to put up some money to help out new ventures. And we're a small island, and that should be encouraged.
Okay, I would just second what Andrew just said, and I know from speaking to Angels that they're delighted by the EIS scheme, because they know they're going to get a break. Is it 75% back against the tax? Is that right? It's 75%. So they're like, they feel like it's been de-risked for them. So it's like a big deal. They get quite excited about it. So I can tell you that that's effective from my discussions.
Hi everyone. I just say watch this space at the moment. I've got to be very careful what I say. It's my 6th day, I think, of working today. 7th, I think. It feels like 7 weeks, months. I can't say too much because I don't know what I'm allowed to say and what I'm not allowed to say, but I think there's been a lot of work going on within the Digital Jersey team, lobbying government, a lot of government discussions about how we get access to that funding. I think also, and I agree with this, and finding out only a few hours ago, having meetings with people, that it's not just about the funding, it's about the support and getting that sort of entrepreneurial culture back in Jersey, perhaps. And so it has to be, if it's just the money and nothing else, that's probably not enough. The other thing I find interesting listening to this, and it feels like a bit of a hospital pass tonight because crowdfunding is one of the areas I know probably least about in financial services, so I'm keeping I'll be lobbying Eddie to do the next one of these on payments, then at least I'll know what I'm talking about. But it strikes me listening to these presentations that trust is a big issue in this. And whether there is a way of setting up some, because there are obviously going to be investors in Jersey, and there are entrepreneurs. If we can set up some sort of scheme local to the island, then hopefully trust is a stronger thing about that. And how we do that, I've no idea, but it strikes me that that's one of the things we should be looking at going forward, and working with companies like Andrews, etc., working with government, etc. Can we set something up like this on Jersey? So it's certainly an idea I've taken away from this tonight already.
Sure.
Just another couple of points on that. I spoke to Jersey Innovation Fund to understand their business model when they were launched, and I think it's an admirable cause. But when I heard about their process of how they actually approve a loan, I said they've got it inverted. What they should have is a 75% failure rate, not a high success rate, because actually they're pump priming the economy and they are stimulating the growth. That's what the money was put there for. I think we spoke to all the islanders and said we put £5 million into a fund, we could lose it all, but hey, we're going to give a lot of businesses the opportunity to grow. I think we'd all vote yes. And that's the mistake I think they made on that fund. That's probably a provocative statement. Secondly, we approached the states when we set up the business and said to them, let's launch a big fund. We'll match you pound for pound, and we will die first. We'll subordinate. And it got nowhere. So it's very difficult in this island to actually sometimes to push an agenda which you know is needed, because you're dealing in an environment which is slow to respond. So I'd be very keen to see if there's some positive things coming on EIS.
Okay. Should we take another question? Yeah.
I was at a similar oriented event here roughly a year ago, and in the takeaways from that event, the number one ask a year ago was an enterprise investment scheme. And I've been mildly surprised that, given the strength of feeling that was evinced on that occasion, that it seems to have gone off the agenda. And the feeling seemed to be at the time that there was a large degree of, for want of a better word, sort of treasury no-no about it. And I just wondered whether it came up at the recent innovation spectacular.
So another hospital pass, thanks for that. So I can't speak for everything in the past, but I know it is on the agenda. And I think from what I can see, part of the problem has been that Jersey has had what people have seen as a very easy to understand, simple approach to taxation. And that's been a strength in the past. I think people are realising that that's not necessarily fit for purpose when you're trying to drive the digital economy. So I think there have been a lot of recent discussions. I think we're expecting some movement fairly quickly. Now, what fairly quickly means in Jersey terms, I'm still finding out, but it hasn't dropped off the agenda from what I've been hearing just over the last few days. So hopefully we'll expect to see some announcements on that over the next few months.
Well, I think the issue has always been here that there's a lot of capital that flows through Jersey, but very little of it sticks here. And, you know, we need to find ways to encourage it to stick here. And if this is one of the ways, and I'm sure, you know, Andrew is right in what he says, that would be a mighty incentive for a lot of relatively well-heeled investors to take a punt on local ideas, that you know, we need to find a way.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Just to add a point to that, I think what's also very positive for Jersey is it's not the local government or the government's money that we would be asking for, is it? It's individuals to back or residents to back local ideas which would benefit Jersey. It almost should be looked at as a win-win for the island, because it's not something that public money would be used for, but the benefits could potentially be wide and far-reaching.
On the other hand, in the short term, it's a net reduction to the public revenue. So if the reductions to the public revenue results in extra redundancies and God knows what, you know, maybe it's not so easy to handle. You know? So there's a short-term, long-term issue.
Make sure you use the mic, please. Okay. Sorry. Do you want to say?
No, I think Alex is absolutely right, and your point is absolutely right. At the end of the day, this would not cost the government any money. There are so many wealthy individuals in this island who would be delighted to back businesses. I know that because I deal with a lot of them. But for them, there's no tax write-off, so they actually do it in the UK. They will do it in the UK. Because an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur. He sees a good idea, he's happy to give someone else an opportunity. But he's not going to foolishly throw his money away. But he will actually risk it if he can get some kind of a write-off.
Take another one.
Hi, Jason Laity. No discussion about EIS or SEIS is complete without me chipping in. So I've been banging on this drum for, well, 2-3 years and probably longer. I mean, there is a loss to the public purse to begin with in terms of the tax relief, but obviously they're effectively multiplying their investment. So arguably it's a far more efficient use of public funds than the Jersey Innovation Fund. Sorry, Andrew. But I think I'd just point out that the innovation report published last week, otherwise excellent, actually said in there that there was no evidence to support that enterprise investment schemes or similar stimulated innovation. Now, when I went to the Treasury a few years ago and asked them, they said there was no demand locally for this type of thing. And I would just encourage you, if you think there is, to make your views known to Treasury and make clear there is, because as has been demonstrated, there is clearly a gap between the funding available from excellent institutions such as Sankis and others and the startups. That's not a question.
Hi, Mark Lone again. I always comment on these things, but I'm getting to 2 points and one question. So one point is that 2 years ago I needed investment, and the bank did exactly what you're saying, made me wait 4 months and pulled the plug 48 hours before the deal, and I had to put up all my personal wealth in order to borrow against it. So it's really stifling entrepreneurialism, the banks not giving out that money. I did look at others at the time, but they were looking to charge 6%, which I felt was a little high, and so I made an arrangement with my portfolio and my bank against my assets. So I recognise that there's a big problem, particularly when you're talking significant funds. Since then, I have now invested in, I think we're in about 3 fintech startups within the C5 Fintech Lab. I'm getting to the thresholds where I can't take much more. I've invested about 100 grand on each of them. And I'm now going to need to find funding, but I don't want to be paying that sort of price for that funding. So the question is, do you see these monies becoming available? Will there really be tax breaks for quantities of a few $100,000 so that I can take these fintech opportunities to the second stage?
Okay, I'll just interject and pass this on. The one thing we haven't discussed here is the stage. So the stage of the entrepreneur, the stage of the startup which is most needed is seed stage. So I know Andrew's funding, but I suspect you won't touch a seed stage company without revenues or whatever. In the UK, US, everywhere, seed is the issue. Seed and Series A. Once you've got traction, revenues, customers, whatever, that's a lot easier. And seed is virtually, so VCs won't touch seed. So if you're talking about a few $100,000, that's where the sort of seed enterprise investment scheme has really come in, because you can raise, if you need 100 grand sort of pre-seed or a few hundred, that's achievable from the crowd chucking 100 quid in. If you need a couple of million, 2, 3, 4, you have to go VC Series A because you can't put enough angels together. So seed is where you need it, and without seed, those companies never grow large enough to ever even get to further on up that curve. So it's got to be at the seed stage, and it's a few $100 grand. It's that type of money.
And it's just not here now, and I'm having to do it personally.
Yeah.
It's getting painful now. So, my risk threshold's hitting the limit. So I'm getting more and more desperate for some of that seed funding to become available.
What I would say is seed is difficult even with an enterprise investment scheme. Seed is the most difficult, because I deal with I'm trying to help people get seed. It's the most difficult stage for the entrepreneur, because you probably you're probably losing money, or you have no product yet, or you have something very fledgling. And so even with the tax breaks in the UK, it's still the most difficult. Without the tax breaks, it just makes it even, it's virtually impossible, because that's where you need it. Once you have traction, revenues, whatever, you've got taken, say, 500 seed, Getting Series A, there are tons of VCs interested because at that point you've got revenues, customers and whatever. It's the early stage, the high risk stage. That's where the investment committees on the VCs and so on can't really rate you. It's very high risk. And the only people who give you the money are either angels who really know what you're doing or the crowd who chuck 100 quid in and can take that kind of risk. And so seed is where in every chapter it's needed. So if you haven't got the tax break, it makes seed doubly difficult. And that means those companies, I suspect your 3 companies, will get into the air and they risk running out of fuel because they can't get that money. So it's very, very difficult.
But I find that disappointing to hear that you've got businesses, you put quite a lot of money into the businesses. To me, that is, the Innovation Fund should be looking towards those businesses if they're based in the islands. I think what what we want to try and do is, it's one of the points I made in my presentation, is that people do want to support their local jurisdiction, and if they can find it, if they can actually see the opportunity and the risk is measured. When I talk about measured, everyone's got a different risk tolerance. So it all comes down to your size of the ticket you're looking for. If you're looking for a £50,000 investment, if someone's worth 400 million, that's not actually, they won't do it because it's not worth their time looking at it. But it's trying to find that level of anticipation. I know investors, as an example, to give them a plug, they tried bring these capital raising dinners and ventures to the island. I've been to a few. There's some interesting presentations. There are places that you can probably go towards. They will charge you quite a big fee, success fee, and they are going to want a higher rate of interest, and they're going to also want part of your business as a free equity.
That's fine.
But that's what it comes down to. It's how much you're willing to give away to get what you want, or does it wither and die?
Sorry, just to add, it is also at that stage where, is it worth having a slightly smaller slice of a more valuable pie, but which is ultimately the goal. But finding those people to come in and take a bit more of that slice is difficult. And I think, again, that's why, without the network or the forums to be able to sort of say, hey, look, I've got a great story, I've got a great business, great opportunity for you to still come in at the early stage. And let's be honest, people come in at the early stage because it's higher risk, because the rewards are greater than coming in later. So I think there does need to be some sort of forum as well, which people like yourselves can actually go out there and say, hey, here's our story, here we are. And Jersey's, it's full of people with business minds looking for ways to spend their money. So in theory, it shouldn't be too difficult, but I think at the moment, as we're finding it, it is lacking.
I'm going to pass over to Andy, who wants to say something. But first of all, Mark, have you thought of Dragon's Den? I can see you on Dragon's Den having an argument with the dragon. So maybe that's the solution if all else fails. Andy?
A question to the panel and also to Jason on this issue about seed and GIF, actually. I floated in a blog some months ago the concept of using GIF, because there's still lots of money in it and they're struggling to give it away, frankly, to support a Jersey EIS equivalent, SEIS equivalent. The board is not really the problem in terms of the process. It's after they've made the decision, it's the government processes that take the time and drag thereafter. And so if you've ring-fenced some money and you give the power to the GIF board or to use that to effectively evaluate the seed applications and say, yep, we're going to ring-fence that bit of money, and then as every year passes, they can de-risk it and put money back in. What's your views on the government, rather than implementing an EIS system, which seems difficult for them to do, actually ring-fencing a set of money and saying, right, we're going to use this for innovation, we're going to use this to help people invest, and if all goes well, we're actually not going to lose anything, and if we do, then we've lost a bit, but we have stimulated innovation.
I think you touched on a very valid point with relation to the GIF board. I'm not bashing GIF, by the way. I think the GIF guys are the right sort of people in that board. But what they are doing is they're hamstrung. And that's what's wrong about this. it should not get or go back to government approval. The money should be given to the entrepreneurs on the board to make sensible decisions. And if it works out, it works out. If it fails, it fails. But they're stimulating growth. So I totally take on board that point. Whether or not you then open that up and allow other investors to come into it and turn it into, in effect, a venture capital fund or an angel fund, I think that's a perfectly sensible idea. But it does require a sea change in government to make that happen. And I'm bewildered at times by the decisions made, and I still am. And of course, I can't comment in any great detail because I'm apathetic with government a lot of the time, because it's very difficult to make any changes. All we can do as an industry is to try and provide a service and deliver within the confines of what our parameters are. And all I know is that we put 125 million to these islands, mainly Jersey, in 20 months. That would not have been there without us. And that's the simple fact. So we're doing it at a higher level. There must be the demand at the lower level. There has to be. And it just needs some dramatic change to make it happen.
I mean, as I was saying earlier on, and obviously Andy will know probably more about this than me, but there are a few proposals about to go in to government on these areas. I can understand already some of the cynicism, I think, about how quickly we can make these things happen. The one thing I would say, which gives me some hope, is having had this innovation report that the government has got. I know there are some specific issues around, what evidence there is or not for SEIS scheme. I think the government's got to do something about it. And I know there's a lot of discussions going about the action plan, who's going to take responsibility. But I think the government have set it, they've commissioned something. I can see there is certainly no lack of commitment. I think what seems like a realisation that they have to actually confront some of these issues. And sometimes it takes a bigger problem on the horizon to force people to, face some difficult issues. So, I realise I'm, probably a lot of cynics in the room, and I'm in the naive optimist stage of my time on Jersey. But, I get some positive vibes. So, but the proof's in the pudding, isn't it?
I'll comment again because apologies you get bored of my voice. We've just set up an office up in Gibraltar. Gibraltar went through a steep financial crisis like all of us did. They have responded immediately to the crisis. They've set up the GIB Bank. They created their own bank as quickly as possible because they recognise that they need to be funding their environment. That's the type of steps to me, and the speed of what they did. We went in and had a meeting with the Chief Minister. That day we had a letter from him, delivered it that day, saying that we want you to come into the island and hear the dispensations to allow you to come in. Where would that happen in Jersey? Anyway.
Okay, last question. I'm going to ask Alex it. There was some talk earlier about regulation following tech or tech following regulation. I'll tell you what happened in the UK. So Zopa launched in 2005 when there was no peer-to-peer crowdfunding regulation, because I talked to Simon Dean Johns, the lawyer who set this up, and basically he said, oh, well, we found a way to do it. We got it all done through the existing regulation. And I know that when Cedars, which is a crowd-funded equity, a crowd equity platform, launched, it also did something that wasn't covered by using unit. I don't really understand legals, but they created like a trust in which you invest in, and the trust held the shares. Does that make sense? I don't really understand this stuff. Today, if you do it on Crowdcube, you get the shares. So the share register has got like 1,000 people on it. So the point was their lawyers found ways through existing regulation to do it. It's a bit clunky, and then regulation followed. And so I'm wondering whether, is it possible, are there any crowd equity platforms in Jersey? And what's to stop you setting one up? Because if someone set one up, so you'd have a Cedars for Jersey, you'd get past this. You'd be able to people would be able to put that money in. Because all I'm telling you is it didn't wait for regulation in the UK, plus Jersey can benchmark what the UK's already done, can't they? So I know that the crowdfunding UK wasn't regulation first, it was smart lawyers working out how to do it. And again, I don't know the details, but I know they did it. You can't speak without a microphone.
No,
So
you've just described how the finance sector here started up.
oh, okay.
Exactly how it started up.
Okay, so is that not possible? I don't know, because I'm from London, I'm not from Jersey.
It's possible, isn't it? It's happened before.
So what I'm saying is, why don't we create that platform? Why doesn't somebody create it? then you've got it, and then regulation can follow, because I've seen it work, I've seen it happen. There you go. Alex, tell me.
Yeah, no, great question. I actually, in my presentation, I said it can be done. I think it absolutely can be done. I don't see any reason why it can't. I think you've touched on lots of relevant points there. The situation in the UK is proven. It's there. It's ready for us to use, to copy, to cherry pick, whatever you will. It's in theory very easy to do. I actually think that it doesn't need to be as innovative as the Cedars when they initially started, because I think that the legislation is such that it allows companies to promote themselves in a wider way, provided you are authorised, which is just all about talking to the JFSC and working with them. The benefit for Jersey is we don't have the FCA. And we don't have the large plethora of regulation that actually overlays and makes things complicated and cumbersome. We're actually quite lean in Jersey when it comes to regulation. So all the more reason to try something. And I think, if somebody came along and said, look, I've got a great idea, let's do it, then, absolutely it's possible.
Well, can't we use a group like this to crowdfund the building of the crowdfunding platform? Everybody chucks some money in, you build the fledgling platform, and you've got it. Because what I'm hearing here is that actually you could do it. And although it may not be done, there may not be a crowdfunding regulation, there'll be some way to do it, right? I don't know, but all I know is it got done in the UK before we had crowdfunding regulation. I don't know what they did.
All you need is a dialogue with an idea and a purpose behind it, and where there's a will, there's a way. So we could have that conversation and we could make it work. It may not be straightforward. It may even on the face of it not be black and white, but you can certainly get there. And I don't see why you couldn't get there in Jersey. And it seems logical. It seems like a logical next step, particularly with companies like Sancus doing what they're doing on the debt side.
Before I know Tony wants it. So that just takes government out of the critical path. So we just need a fintech entrepreneur to lead it, and then everyone will support them.
I was just going to say, it's a good idea. I was going to say, is it a cultural thing? You're saying it's been done before. Has Jersey become too conservative about these things?
Give him the mic. Miguel, give him the mic.
Great microphone.
It's always been said that in recent years it's been too easy to earn money in Jersey, so that somehow our entrepreneurial cutting edge has become blunted and complacent or whatever. I don't know. On the other hand, I've been coming to Jersey for a long time, and if I counted the number of times I've heard in response to problems, there is always a way in Jersey. And coming back to how the finance sector started up, it started up with a bunch of lawyers pooling their expertise and developing in a small way. And you could almost write on the flag, if the lawyers don't want it, then it won't happen. So, the lawyers are who you have to convince, not the finance sector or the people. It's the lawyers that have got to.
It looks pretty convinced to me, but yeah.
Well, it's true.
Yeah, but there's obviously a hunger thing. When the financial service community was set up here, there was obviously a real hunger and a drive to do it.
That's
and I think it strikes me that we need to find that again. And I think, to be fair, that's what people are trying to do with the innovation report, is what does it need? And some of that is a cultural thing. But one thing I would say is, I know there are, as just in discussions had over the last couple of days, there are various proposals going in. I don't think those proposals actually include something on this side of things. So, maybe one of my takeaways from tonight is we should add that. If people feel so strongly that this would really help on Jersey, that's something we should take. I mean, one of the things I want to do over the coming months is really start to prioritise Digital Jersey's activities on the things that are really going to make a difference. So rather than try and do 1,000 things, try and focus on a few things that the business community we've got represented here think are really going to make a difference to, the sort of thing Mark was talking about. And if people feel that strongly, then I'll make sure we put some time and effort and resources into adding this sort of proposal to our discussions with government.
But if we're really saying that the main thing standing in the way at Treasury is 20 means 20, then it's just not good enough,
Well, that's not a bar. It's just a you need to do it a different way. Yeah. It's not a you can't do it. It's just you do it a different way. It's a different set of.
Well, they seem to be saying that they don't want the tax system to become more complex than 20 means 20.
Look, good entrepreneurs find their way past all the obstacles, right? In the UK, I'm not being funny, they found their way through. I don't know how. Alex is saying it's possible. My preference.
The lawyers did it.
The lawyers do it. So if there's a way to do it, why not do it? I mean, my preference, frankly, and I'm on camera, is to actually bypass the politicians and all that, because the entrepreneur will get it done far more quickly by building that platform, which is exactly what happens.
The lawyers do it. The question is, do they want it? If they want it, it will happen.
It seems to me everybody wants it. Everybody wants this, don't they?
Well, I'm not sure.
You're not sure? A seed investing platform for Jersey, it seems to me that everyone does want it.
I think the point you're raising is the lawyers will do it if they're paid. So if somebody's going to stump the cash up to get to try and find the solution, then the lawyers will be creative enough, as long as they're not breaching any laws or rules or regulation, to get you there. Yeah. But it does require the cash. And that's where the law firms are commercial animals themselves, and they have to see what's right.
Well, maybe that's what we should crowdfund.
Okay, good note. Okay, so on that brilliant note, we're going to wrap the panel up. Thank you very, very much, everyone. Thank you. Okay. You guys want to take a seat? I'll just close up.